My name is Jeff Dunoff. I teach at Temple Law School in Philadelphia. My primary areas of interest are public international law and international regulatory regimes, particularly economic regimes, with a special focus on the trade system. From a lawyer's perspective, the trade system is a constellation of rules that govern international trade. Part of the triumph of the international trade system is that it's a rule-based system. It is not a power-based system, and so there are literally thousands of pages of legal rules, not that I recommend anybody reads them, and there is a very energetic dispute settlement system that looks very much like domestic courts that people might be familiar with, that resolves disputes sometimes between the superpowers, between the US and the EU, and sometimes between very small states and very large states. And because it is a rule-based system, the small states can prevail in this adjudicatory forum. I think the system for many years was one of the triumphs of international governance, but right now the system has run out of gas. I think that's why this commission at this point in time is particularly important. The system started, it consisted of 22 like-minded states. They made trade policy, it was under the radar screen, there was little public oversight, little public involvement. Those days are long gone, and now the WTO has to adjust to a membership of 150 very diverse states and insistent demands from civil society that the people also have a voice in the rules that affect them. What I am particularly excited about in terms of the Commission is both the breadth of knowledge and experience in terms of geographic spread, as well as what I think might be a fresh perspective. As you may know, 2 years ago, the WTO commissioned a very similar study. It was a very useful study, but it was criticized because many people thought it consisted primarily of insiders, people inside the system, who perhaps did not have as critical an eye. What's exciting about this commission is I think they've collected really the best of young thinkers from economics, from political science, from law, who will really take a fresh look at the WTO in this time of very strong transition. The system is in stasis. The system has run out of gas. It needs a push. I don't think the push is going to come from inside. It's going to come from outside. Hopefully we can contribute to that. I think there are a number of reasons. I think primarily they revolve around 3 issues. And to summarize them, you might look at them through 3 questions. Who, what, and where. Who means who drives the trade system? Who has a voice? Who does it serve? What means what issues are in the trade system? Should it deal with environment, with labor, with human rights, with competition? What's in, what's out? Where is a question about coherence? Where does trade law fit within a larger universe? I think those are the 3 questions that our commission ought to focus on, and I'm hopeful that we can come up with some fresh thinking on those 3 topics. There's a very complex relationship between international and domestic law. From the international lawyer's perspective, nation states are bound by the treaties they sign. They're bound by the obligations contained in those treaties. If one state believes that another is not honoring one of those commitments, it can challenge them in WTO dispute settlement. It's a highly legalized process. And if the complainant prevails, the losing side will be asked to change its law. If it does not change its law, the prevailing party can impose trade sanctions against the loser. What's fairly extraordinary is that in 10 years of WTO practice, there have been well over 300 of these disputes, and the compliance rate is roughly 85 or 90%. So it's a very effective system. Dispute settlement is very good at enforcing the rules as they are written. If you don't like those rules, that won't be a particularly attractive system. And so one of the very big problems is a widespread perception that there is an imbalance, both in the content of the rules, that they favor the stronger states, as well as in the implementation of the rules. It may be that countries like the US and the EU engage in a bit of foot dragging, but at the same time impose very significant pressures on developing countries to fully implement very quickly. And that's a real problem. The suggestion I would have is to look for ways to bring developing countries into the process at the front end rather than at the back end. To date, for many years, the WTO was dominated by a small number of powerful states, the Quad countries. Since 2000, that's begun to change. I think that developing countries have obtained a voice. The open question is whether they have obtained influence. And I think that a central challenge moving forward is to find a way to structure a process so that all states, not just the powerful states, can be heard in the construction of these rules. These sorts of problems, of course, are not unique to the trade system. You would see them in international environmental law, in human rights law. So there may be models that we might be able to borrow from, models both of institutional design, models in terms of procedures, voting mechanisms. So I think that there are models available, and my hope would be that there would be political will among the member states to actually implement those models. The legal framework sets out the basic structure. It tells you who can be a member, who can't, who can be heard, who can't. What are the decision-making processes? Is there going to be a vote? Is there going to be a consensus process? How will the negotiations be organized? And I think those questions of institutional design are critical. They can't make an irresolvable dispute go away, right? Structure can't do that. But structure can help you reach agreements that are possible. A bad structure might prevent you from reaching those agreements. So I think that's the way in which law, and really the lawyer's craft of institutional design, can be useful.